Breanna Hughes, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Breanna, you have a very interesting background. I'm personally interested in it because you have a product management in tech and startups kind of a background. So when I look at someone like you, how you go from a career path like that to starting your own fertility-based e-commerce physical products business, it really intrigues me. So I'm very curious how that transition was made, how the idea first came about, that you discovered that there was a huge gap in the fertility education and care, and how you met your co-founder, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great story. It brings a smile to my face still every day. So, as you mentioned, I've spent my entire career in tech, specifically product management. I've done some development and design, but yeah, I loved the startup space. I loved the pace. I loved the problems, and I loved like small teams and growing small teams. And I was actually I was head of product at a health tech company. It was a B2B software company at the time that sold to companies. And while I was leading product there, and I was helping kind of better the health of millions of people, I actually was going through my own infertility journey quite silently. So the day that I had interviewed at that company, I had found out that morning that I was pregnant, and I had no idea. I was surprised. And unfortunately for me, by the time that I signed the contract and started my first day, I'd had a miscarriage. So I literally, like, from the start of becoming head of product there, I had this kind of shadow of my fertility journey that had followed me throughout my my time there. So it was always top of mind for me every day when I was using technology to help solve the health of millions of people. Like, why is there this gap over here in my own health experience? And as I started to get into kind of fertility treatment and into a fertility clinic, and I saw that the gaps of knowledge that I had, like, I considered myself a well-researched person. I conducted user research every day. I knew embarrassingly little about my reproductive health. And when I started to have conversations, I noticed I was not alone. A lot of people really had no idea what it meant to kind of have a baby and all the different things that go into it. So that was kind of nagging top of mind, like always at the back of my mind. And when it became really top of mind for me is I had literally gone through about 5 years of infertility, and I was on my second round of IVF at that time. And I had multiple miscarriages since and failures. And it wasn't enough for me to just be like sitting aside and thinking like, this is a problem that needs to be solved. I knew I had to be the one to solve it. And so I had actually pitched a very well-known fertility doctor. He's extraordinarily entrepreneurial. I had come to him with my problems that I had seen personally firsthand. And I had told him, I'm like, do you either know of a solution, or do you know of somebody else that's working on this problem? Or do you want to work on this problem with me? Like, there's clearly, like, there's something here. And he was like, you're right, there is something here. I like where this is going. Let me connect you to this person that I know, Sam, who's working on a similar problem as you, and let's see like what can happen. And so he connected me with Sam, who's my co-founder. She's CEO, and we hit it off immediately. We were like-minded people. We were solving the problems in different ways. And we connected and alongside our doctor founders, and we started Bird&Be from that point on. So it was identifying my own personal problem and kind of coming up with a potential solution.
That's incredible. Somebody else introduced you to a co-founder and you hit it off. It's so hard to find co-founders usually.
Yeah, totally. And like the really great thing is she has like a marketing and PR background, and I had the tech skills because we knew that tech was going to be involved in some capacity, because the big barrier that we wanted to solve for was like access to care. And so the most obvious from like a product manager mindset of eliminating access is leveraging technology to do so. And so that was like, we had a really great complementary skill set, and we had a great kind of team with the doctors and the medical backing as well.
Mm-hmm. So the first product was supposed to be, it didn't start off as a physical product, but more like access slash education slash, like what exactly was the first product supposed to be?
Yeah, so we didn't know. I actually had some guesses of what it could be, but I also, based on my product management background, really knew how important generative research is. And so I knew I had my own personal problems. And so what I went and set out to do is actually uncover, okay, who else is experiencing the same problems? What problem are they willing to pay for? And to help us prioritize those different solutions that we had. So we had a bunch of different ideas. And so we actually went to the market to be able to test and validate. So I was employed at the time. So I had to create a separation. We created a bit of a fake company. We didn't have any products. We created some mock-ups pretending we had products, and we sent out a bunch of surveys. I conducted hundreds and hundreds of user interviews. So we spoke to and touched like thousands of people. And what really came through was this problem around supplements. There was a lot of different problems around fertility, and we tried to keep it broad at first, but it was so clear in the research that we had done that supplements was this whole like mystifying thing. People didn't know why they were taking what they were taking. They didn't know the dosaging. They were spending hundreds of dollars already on supplements. And so that for me was like, okay, there's like a revenue opportunity here right out of the gate. And it really showed, I just saw all the signs of product market fit, like screaming at me. And it was very clear that this was the problem. And I just remember I had a Sorel boot box full of like 30 different bottles of pills. And it took up so much space in my closet. And every Sunday I was counting out the pills in my pill case. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And turns out, based on our research, so many people felt the same, and they were very frustrated with that part of the experience. So that was, for us, clear roadmap. We start with the supplement problem, and then we get into tests, which was like a kind of secondary problem.
Well, I love hearing the stories of fake company, fake website, surveys, landing pages.
Totally.
And every time I talk to a founder who tells me that's how they started, I must drill in. So from product person to product person. And the reason I do that is, one, a lot of people don't know this is a way to start something. Two, the people who do know this is a way to start something are too lazy to do it. They just quickly go and build it instead, or not quickly go and build it without doing it. So tell us a little bit more about that. Let's educate folks. When you come up with an idea, before you actually build the actual thing, how do you do these like fake things to collect feedback, learn more, and then build a more informed roadmap?
Yeah, so I have to give credit. This is where like product management is like a maybe secret, amazing kind of founder role to have. Is I learned all of this in my product management skills, especially because I did work for a company that their whole way of working was truly agile development. Like, people say they do agile all the time, and this becomes super relevant when we talk about how we made physical products, because we actually took an agile approach, which it still blows my mind. But that's where like that really helps, where you can create, like, you try to think of like the smallest thing that you can do that can bring people value. And so that's like, even what I realized really quickly on when it came to user research, and where like a fake company didn't really matter, is people really wanted their fertility journeys and stories to be heard. So they were more than willing to be able to fill out a survey, to conduct user interviews. Like, the number of times I was crying alongside people in our original user interviews was...
How did you find them in the first place? In message boards and things?
Facebook groups. Yeah, Facebook groups. So there's lots of trying to conceive Facebook groups. I also had started being much more public about my fertility journey. I always say, before it was like popular too, definitely weirded a lot of people out. I was kind of a bit of ahead of my time. I had 10,000 Twitter followers, and I publicly tweeted to all of them that I was suffering from infertility, that I had miscarriages, that I was going through IVF. And so naturally, I found and connected with a lot of people that were dealing with the same challenges that way. So I was able to kind of distribute it privately that way and set up customer interviews that way. But if you're not already
on the Facebook groups, exactly. So you would go on there and say, do you say that like I'm also experiencing the same problems, so person to person, let's talk to each other, or I'm also working on a potential company, would you talk to me? Like, would you DM them, or just like in the comments, or like, let's be more specific about like the practicality of how to use Facebook groups to get research.
Yeah. So it totally depends on the rules of the Facebook group. So I'd often approach the admins and I'd make sure that what I was doing was okay. And it was for them, I think, because I was actually a contributor to the community. Like, I was embedded in it. I shared my journey. I was sharing resources. And so I think they looked at my history and they're like, okay, she's like deep. She's one of us, which again comes back to kind of some of the successes of our brands, which we'll talk about later, is being embedded in the community. And one of them really helped from that aspect. So I don't actually have a solve for people. If you're solving a problem and you're solving a women problem and you identify as male or whatever, like there's some challenges, extra challenges, but I messaged the admins and made sure it was okay that I posted. And I also shared on Twitter, and I asked people to amplify and send to their groups. And so that was how it was like through word of mouth and using social media to really distribute the surveys. It helps that I had a big following as well. Like 10,000 Twitter followers back in the day was a lot at the time. And so that was super helpful.
And you had nothing to sell at the time. So people kind of had their walls down probably. You're just like trying to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And I really didn't take the sales driven approach. Like, I was very much like, I want to help people get pregnant. Like, this is, we're all in the same goal, the same path. And it's absolutely incredible to see that so many of those people who I talked to initially are still like customers of ours, and we've seen them have babies since. So it really comes full circle and has been absolutely incredible. And they helped and shape our company. And they get to kind of feel like a part of it.
I love that. Now, you mentioned that you also did the physical product part of the agile.
Yeah.
So I must hear this.
So crazy.
What is the minimum viable physical product that actually makes people pregnant?
Yeah. So we did a pre-launch before we launched to like the complete public, and we were selling everywhere across border. We actually custom compounded. Like it's horrible for margins. We knew it was not sustainable, and it was terrible for scale, but really we knew it was the right way for us to make sure that before we took it to kind of contract manufacturing, we wanted to nail the formula and make sure it was something that tasted good, that smelled nice, as nice as you can get vitamins to smell, and ultimately make sure that it was something that people not only would buy, but they would actually take and adhere to. So we actually compounded in very, very small batches, like so it was so crazy, at a pharmacy. And that's what we actually were sending to kind of our first kind of pre-launch customers. And we were getting amazing feedback, including terrible feedback. So I still remember we wrote an email. I personally wrote the subject line saying, "What's that smell?" where we communicated to customers because we had a very stinky ingredient called choline, and the form and the way that it had compounded was a horrible smell that honestly, I was like the founder of the company and I was trying to have a baby and I couldn't even stomach. And so we were able to identify early on that, hey, we shouldn't use choline. So we were able to custom compound and literally change the forms of our ingredients and the suppliers so that we could actually get to a tolerable formula that people would take.
Mm-hmm. I think
it's so unscalable.
Step here, Breanna.
Yeah.
I think we skipped the part where you're a product manager for a tech company to compounding very quickly. I think there's a missing link here about how you learn about what to even compound, or what was the
Hmm.
initial ingredients that you needed to make, and how did you learn how to compound what? Did you have to find a chemist? How did you find out about the places that would actually produce this stuff for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. So that's where I will give credit, fortunately, to our medical founding team. So we have two naturopathic doctors that have spent their entire lives in fertility naturopathic care. They even have chains of clinics, of naturopathic clinics that are embedded in IVF centers. And so they know so much about supplements, as well as which supplements that they are prescribing to all of their patients to be taking. And they also could see the data and seeing what actually is having positive impacts on the
Mm-hmm.
outcomes. So it's through their extensive, and then combined, we've married like naturopathic doctor with medical doctor. So we have a reproductive endocrinologist on the founding team, and he really brought in, okay, what are fertility doctors telling their patients to be taking that has the kind of medical evidence and all the appropriate studies that back the different ingredients. And so we
Mm-hmm.
married the two so to be able to develop our formula. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where that piece came from. Fortunately, like the tech person, I had nothing to do with the formula. What I did have to do was championing what are the types of things that customers are looking for, and then the voice of the customer back. Because if you were to ask a doctor, like, what are all the things, like someone would be taking probably like 30 different pills, and so much that's not tolerable. So really, like, where I helped bridge that gap is the customer voice of finding that sweet spot of like, okay, what is not only impactful to egg quality and sperm quality and like the overall fertility health and fetal development, but also like what will our customers pay for and actually take, because the best like the best supplement is one that someone will actually take.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned that you really value generative research from your product management background. So here, again, let's go back to research, but more like market gap research. When you were thinking about these are the existing products in the market, this is what people are taking, and there's some unhappiness for one reason or another. How did you kind of think about that? Let's kind of fill, like, what was that gap exactly? And, how would you kind of explain that gap in one sentence in an elevator pitch if you met somebody who was having fertility problems, saying that, look, we're doing something blank, blank, blank that's different than these other things. Like,
Yeah.
quick, is it quickly easy to explain?
Yeah, it is taken us some massaging, and we are always evolving our messaging and seeing what resonates. But really, it was the fertility doctor medically backed supplements at medical dosages that are available direct to consumer and aren't gated by a prescription or an appointment with a naturopathic doctor.
Mm-hmm. So what was the first SKU? And was it only, did you start as a DTC? Did you
We
think
did.
about Amazon or retail?
No, we were just D2C at first, and that continues to be most of our business is direct to consumer. And we are right now, we are also being sold in fertility clinics, and then and select like naturopathic clinics and acupuncturists with a fertility focus.
Mm-hmm. How did you sell your first 100 items?
On our website. And I believe it was like our first or second month. We had great traction really early on. My favorite story was our very first customer was actually from my very small hometown, and I didn't know them. And I actually have no idea how she had heard about us. And we were in like quiet launch mode. We hadn't publicly announced anything, but I had put the website up to be able to accept sales, to like go through my first purchase, to be able to test it. And she actually beat us to the punch, and she had subscribed to our product before I even finished. So I don't even know how she figured it out. And she was an incredible loyal customer, and she got pregnant and had her baby, which I'm so happy. But yeah, it spread quite rapidly.
Breanna, do you remember the first time you felt this thing is gonna explode? Like, did something happen? Do you remember a specific moment where the numbers started showing some kind of a hockey stick like traction where, okay, we're doing something special here? When did it happen? If it did happen, maybe it didn't happen. I don't know.
I mean, any day. No, honestly. So the thing about starting a mission driven company that you're literally solving your own and it's like such an emotional problem is our numbers are great and we're definitely seeing great traction, and like product market fit has been phenomenal, but really it's the success stories. It's when we had our first person tell us that they've been trying for a really long time. They were on our supplements for 3 months and they got pregnant. And when we started just having those, like we literally have pregnancy success stories trickling, like not even trickling in now, like it's coming in as masses now. But when they were starting to happen every single day, that's when I knew I'm like, we're doing literally what I'm set out to do. And I can't tell you how rewarding of a feeling it is knowing that my infertility journey that I went through and all those 5 years of pain and heartache was because of this. Like I needed to start this company. I needed to build this like business with like my co-founder Sam so that we could literally help other people get their baby.
Mm-hmm. Breanna, coming from a tech background into physical products, formulas, compounds, manufacturing, inventory. What are
Don't do it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, what was the learning like? Was it quite smooth, or what were the biggest friction points that really challenged you? What can you share about that?
Yeah, so physical products is extraordinarily hard. It's hard for a number of reasons, especially when we're in the health space. So while we started off very agile and nimble with our custom compounding, we can't do that anymore. We have like a lot of approvals through Health Canada. We need to make sure like that there's like FDA regulations, and and you also can't be reckless and you can't be changing things all the time on your customers. And so that piece has definitely been one of the harder challenges. Whereas with software, if you get customer feedback on something, you can code and like you can get it shipped. You could fix a bug or an issue overnight, or even like in a couple minutes. Whereas like physical goods and physical products, if you have like a smellier batch than normal, you have to like the troubleshooting process as well as the fixing and solving the problem is just a way longer time frame. And so that's been a huge hurdle. I also vastly underestimated, given like with the world of Amazon Prime and shipping, just how complicated and hard it is still to ship physical goods to places and how it's expensive. I didn't have the appreciation for getting physical products in people's hands and how it isn't as easy as it seems. So I have the utmost respect for all the people who have been doing that. Operations is extraordinarily hard. And the customer expectations now with things being able to be delivered like same day in an hour through like DoorDash and things like that. It just, I love it. It's a high bar, but it is much more challenging and much more costly to be able to reach that bar than I had personally thought it would be.
What are some of the marketing channels that were working really good in the early days, and how has that changed now? Some time into it, what do you think that's working now, and what do you think that's gonna kind of stop working and start plateauing after a while?
Yeah, so we actually are only 3 full years in selling our products. So what has been working still has been continuing to work for us. And that's really finding that community touch that we have. So we have absolutely incredible champions that love our brand and love our products and support us. And we are so grateful for them. We have to give ourselves credit, like, both like Sam and I from early days, Sam also had kind of suffered from kind of pregnancy loss. I had my like infertility IVF journey, and many team members, many people on our team have gone through that. And so we know how to speak to people that are in the community and that are going through this. Like, we know what's triggering. We know we have the empathy and the deep understanding of what they're going through. And that really has set us apart. And we again, like through our own personal experiences, all the pregnancy tests on the market and all the supplements were really focused on like a happy couple on the bathroom floor, like, we're pregnant, and they're smiling, when the reality is like 80% of people who are trying every month fail and are unsuccessful. And so there's a lot more people crying on the bathroom floor because they had a negative pregnancy test than there is people on the floor with the positive story. And so us being able to really leverage that and our own personal experiences and that deep empathy and understanding has been really helpful for us to reach the community in a way that they like to be spoken to, as opposed to we're not triggering them and alienating them.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned fertility clinics as a distribution channel has been quite effective for you. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so this is a newer distribution channel for us, but the great thing about creating a medically sound, medically backed product is it's trusted by doctors. And one of my favorite stories, and why we knew we wanted to sell to fertility clinics. It was on our roadmap, but what drew us in earlier was I received an Instagram DM from my florist. And she had said to me, "Hey, Breanna, do you, like, my fertility clinic told my husband and I to take Bird&Be supplements for 3 months before starting IVF and then to come back. Like, do you know that this is happening?" And I did it. Like, we didn't. We're like, thank you to that doctor. And that's where we really saw, okay, like there's something to this because we make it easier for their patients as well, because they just send them one thing as opposed to saying, oh, here's a shopping list that you have to go and buy all these bottles from all these different places and make sure that you have the right dosage and the right form. Like, it's a really complicated and expensive conversation for a doctor to have with their patient, as opposed to saying, go to Bird&Be and buy this product. So we're making their lives easier, and we're also literally improving results through our supplements, which we ran a study that proves this. And so we are really, really excited about clinics being that distribution channel for us and exposing patients to it, because what patient, if a doctor tells them to do something in this context, what patient is going to be like, no, actually, I'm not. So it's the most incredible referral that we could have. And we're so appreciative to our existing partners and can't wait to add more.
Breanna, your customers, when they use the Bird&Be products and they become pregnant, and they've had such a wonderful experience because your brand has been a part of their pregnancy journey, do they come back to you and say, well, I still want to keep using stuff now we have a baby. What do you have for me? Do they come to you with ideas about like post-pregnancy, early stage motherhood type of products?
Yeah, so we actually have a postpartum product, and we expanded that to include like lactation support, because we know that that's a high stressor as well when you're in kind of your earlier postpartum, and if you're choosing to nurse your child. So we do have products from that regard, and then we also do have ongoing maintenance products for people who have PCOS, and we have some products in the pipeline that we're just kind of currently doing some R&D on that are definitely in the same realm to help and support people who are in their postpartum or between children or even done having kids and need that ongoing support.
Mm-hmm. So I have to ask you, since you're a fellow tech person starting a physical product, but I mean, you did start this brand because it was a part of your personal journey. So it feels like you really didn't choose this. The business chose you in a sense.
Totally.
If you were to start something different, but you kind of choose the category based on what you've learned in the past 3 or 4 years of your entry into the physical products world, like from a business perspective, this makes sense to start a business like this. What category would you choose? And it can be anything.
Oh, I'd totally go back to B2B and SaaS, like SaaS software. It's like,
really,
yeah. Do
But
you,
don't you think SaaS is dying because of AI?
okay, fair. But like what, so I love AI, and like there's a way to kind of have AI hurt you or help you. And I have definitely already found ways for AI to help me. And so I am completely inspired by that. But D2C is very hard. It's very expensive. There's a lot of noise talking to people. It's definitely, it's their own personal budgets. Like I kind of joke now, and I'm not to take away from the severity of B2B business is very legit, but it definitely feels more like monopoly money when you're dealing with like at a big company with big budgets. Like it's not your physical, like it's not your money coming out of your bank account. So the spend and tolerance is a lot higher. And yeah, D2C is hard. And same with a physical product. So the one thing that has really rung true to me is I for sure want to really tie myself to a mission that it helps the world. Like it is so incredibly, so I have two young kids, which I want time to be able to dig into that because that's also wild as part of this startup story. But I have two very young children, and to get up every day and to leave them and go to work, it's a no-brainer for me because I see the joy that they bring and the hardship that they bring, but the joy that they bring to my life. And what better motivation to leave them every day to then help the world kind of be able to get their children and live their dreams. So that's something that has really shifted, is like the importance to have such a strong personal tie to the mission. It makes everything so much easier especially when days are so hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is so interesting, right? Because, you felt a personal challenge, you became a part of a community very authentically. I can imagine if just somebody random who thought, there's a great business opportunity in women's fertility, probably those Facebook message group admins would just shut them down saying, you're not one of us. You're just trying to sell your stuff here, So, and again, what are some of the things that you care so much about in life? Because pregnancy is a very important milestone in people's lives. So that's just one of the very, very important things. But are there a lot of other types of very, very important things that people care so much about that you kind of turn it into your mission of your life's work, and then maybe start participating in communities, and maybe a year later, I remember a conversation I had with Neuro's founder, and he told me a similar story of him kind of participating in these Reddit communities about, certain types of, I forget now what the ingredient was, but just like a very passionate community. And then after about a couple of years of already being a part of that community, he finally started saying, look, I'm kind of working on something. And then they just ate it up. But I'm like, that's a big investment up front.
It's a big, no. And honestly, I know this, but I've worked for companies that was like a fan fiction site for like teenagers essentially. And I wasn't a teenager and I didn't read fan fiction. There's ways that you can kind of understand different customers. I just so happen to build a company based on my own problems and my own passions, but that's not to say that you have to directly experience something to be passionate about it. And there's amazing tools and shortcuts and just talking to people, having the conversations, being really curious. And and again, the piece that's most important from my perspective, from a product management lens into starting a company, is trying to being a must-have product and not a nice to have. That's finding that sweet spot where it's actually core and critical to the business, as opposed to a nice feature or I can do away with that. That really helps when things get hard with recession or there's just global pandemics, things that happen, if you're a must have versus a nice have. So, and the only way that you can really understand what that is and what's that problem is by talking to people. And there's great, usertesting.com. I used religiously back in the day with when I was needed to recruit people of a certain demographic, if it was hard to go through Facebook groups and things like that. There's a number of different tools that you can pay for to be able to access different audiences. It is so much, that's a so much easier than when I first started out in product management, where I literally waited on the street and walked up to people to get their, and put a phone in front of them to get their feedback on an app that I was building. So there's a lot, it has come a long way to be able to get that user research and feedback, but it's incredibly important that you uncover things that you never would have imagined by talking to people.
Breanna, final two-part question. What are the two problems giving you a headache right now, and top two priorities that you're excited about for the year?
Yeah, so definitely supply chain is giving me a headache. There's a postal strike happening right now, so getting packages to customers' hands, as well as different ingredients and making sure that we have really great inventory management. That's been a challenge for us. And continues to kind of be, but we have a path and a solution. And the one thing I've realized as part of this journey is it's important to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. We try to always have like 4 different options because there's different things that come up all the time. And what we're really excited about is we're definitely taking a look inward in 2025 on making sure that our existing customers and our loyal customers feel supported and loved by us. And we really want to make that known. They are, but there's ways that we can make that kind of more known to them, as well as a lot more brand recognition. So you'll definitely hear more about us. We're going to be making some bigger splashes to get our name out there. And I can't wait to help people on their journey to a family. But one more quick thing. I need to actually plug my crazy Bird&Be story. So every founder has a moment where you're like, I quit my job for this? Did I do the right thing? This is pretty crazy. And I had multiple signs from the universe that I had done the right thing. So one of them was 3 days before we launched to the public, I found out I was pregnant. After that, my IVF round was successful, to the point where we had our PR, our press release. We called them and been like, actually, can you add this to the bottom of the press release? So my pregnancy announcement was in a national newspaper, which is pretty awesome. And then what had happened after, so I had returned to work, and I had actually found out that I was spontaneously pregnant after taking our products with baby number 2. And I had zero idea. And I found out using our Bird&Be pregnancy test that I had actually spontaneously conceived without support of medical intervention, my second son. So never after my 5-year infertility journey would I imagine that I would have 2 under 2 born so close together. My life is hectic with a third baby of a startup, but that was definitely for me the sign that I had done the right thing, walking away from my executive job and helping people every day grow their families.
That's so amazing. I don't know if that's not a sign that you definitely are working on the right thing. I don't know what is. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's like the universe literally was like, here's the sign, you're in the right place. So just find something you're passionate about. It's the best. And the day, especially in those pits of despair days that still come, even when you love your mission and love everything you're working on, man, it can be hard.
Breanna Hughes, thank you for sharing your journey with me.
Thank you for having me.